John, fans forum out there in left field. What button are you going to hit? What do the fans got to say about you or me or the big topics on the table?
There's some loaded questions in this list, but let's start with Matthew because he always throws us a couple of bucks. We'll go to him first. And he says, what would you trade DeVries or Salas for?
I would not. Why are we trading anybody? That is the future of Padre baseball. The window playing in World Series is about right here. It's going to get smaller because of the age of the pitchers and impending free agents for those pitchers. I'm not trading DeVries nor Salas. They've got two really good young left-handed pitchers at Class A right now, like Elsinore, but that's way down the road. But that's the future of Padre baseball. So what they have to win with. I'm not trading anybody, even if guys go down with injuries. I'm not doing that. The biggest question to me is, you have signed guys to contract extensions, the latest being Jackson Merrill. Can you create something that would make Michael King and Dylan Cease want to forego free agency and stay here because of the atmosphere at Petco Park, the greatness, the fan support, etc.? Can you do that between now and the baseball trade deadline? That, to me, is the next priority for A.J. Preller. It's not trading the kid shortstop at A or obviously the catcher at AA. John?
Yeah, I mean, why would you trade those guys? I mean, you've depleted all of the other resources except those two crown jewels, and they're in first place. They're 10-3. You don't need to make any desperation moves. So clearly, the other teams are all going to be calling and asking for those guys.
That's where we are. Let's go to the next one.
Let's keep moving. Okay, and here's a shout out from Joel. And he goes, from the armpit of Riverside to the dirty south of Otay Mesa, I want to talk sports with you.
Oh, Joel, don't be critical of where you live and where I work. Come on now. It was interesting because John Riley's always asked me, how did you come up with this? Or why did you say that back in the day on 690 and on 1090? And I said, well, we're always looking for a hook to get people actively involved with what we're doing with the podcast. And I just came up with this idea of linking all these towns together. So when somebody's in a traffic jam on Interstate 15 on their way to the North County, when they heard me yell out from Rancho Penasquitos to Rancho Santa Fe, they'd want to get on and hit their cell phone and get on the air with us. That's where that sales pitch came from. Does that make sense, John?
Poway, Penasquitos, get those lines lit. It's just fantastic. Okay, let's keep going. Matt has another one because he's giving us some money. He goes, hey, say it with me, John. Dodgers fire Mark Prior.
Under what case? I mean, they seem to have a lot of confidence in Mark Prior. Pitching injuries are not his fault. Obviously, John and I have talked extensively about the crisis of velocity versus max effort. Dodgers are not the only ones that have had these problems. It's everywhere in Major League Baseball. I don't see that Prior's to blame for anything. I think the big issue is, can you solve a pitcher's mechanical problems? And that's a huge thing. I think if we're looking at closer to home, we're looking at Ruben Niebla and what they've been able to do to sort out mechanical problems, release points, and all those things that make a pitcher good or get a pitcher in trouble. Prior has his hands full working with Blake Snell. Nobody, not Tampa Bay, not San Diego, and obviously not the Giants, and now not the Dodgers, have been able to work out why Snell has these stretches where he is so out of whack in terms of release point and has to throw 96 pitches in the first 5 innings a game and has to be pulled. Nobody's ever solved that, despite the fact the guy's got great stuff and the guy throws hard and some of his stuff is really wicked, and despite the fact he's had really good ERAs the second half of a whole pile of seasons. But I don't think that's a Prior issue. I think that's a Snell issue, and maybe some guys, they just can't repeat their motion, arm slots and all that. Does that make sense, John?
It does. I think Mark Prior is probably in one of the best spots of any pitching coach because they've got so many talented pitchers there. So if one guy goes sideways a bit, he can just roll in the next guy. But as far as Blake Snell is concerned, I often wondered if the Tampa Rays, kind of were happy to get rid of him. Because remember, he had that deal where he would only go like 5 innings. He hit his pitch count at 90 or 100. And it was in that World Series game where he got pulled after like 5 1/3 innings, and he was mowing down the Dodgers. But the Tampa Rays organization knew that Snell was never going to be like a 7 or 8 inning stud.
They also knew that they probably, because of economics, are not going to be able to sign guys who are going to stay as free agents. That's why if you track back and look at the number of pitchers that Tampa has traded away, Snell was one. Chris Archer was a red hot prospect who pitched really well early in his career. There was impending free agency there. They traded him because he physically broke down and is out of baseball now. But Tampa just historically has developed arms, used them as they got closer, not to arbitration, but as they got closer to free agency, they moved those guys out of there. But Snell's a mystery that nobody's been able to harness all that talent, all that firepower, and make him consistent. That's strange.
Yeah, well, it's mental. I mean, it's got to be mental. And Snell's got a lot going on in his head when he's pitching. I mean, I like that in a way as a fan, because in the press conferences after the game, he really breaks it down, but it just tells you how much of it's in his head.
Okay, we move on. Thanks for the input, Matt. Next one.
Let's go to Gary. He says, Lee, do you think this is finally the year when the Kings beat the Oilers in the playoffs?
Edmonton's really hurting. They got a lot of banged up guys. Now, they just announced early this morning, and they're finishing the season on a real skid. They've announced that they're going to have Draisaitl back, and they're going to have Connor McDavid back at 100%. They're in the playoffs, but they're going to be on the road in the playoffs. So, yeah, I think this is the year, for the Kings to make their push. Now, the Western Conference is really tough. Everything goes through 53-win Winnipeg right now in the Western Conference. Winnipeg's got to prove. Winnipeg just have to prove that they can win in postseason, because that's the best of 7 is a really different animal than playing on a Tuesday night in Minnesota and a Thursday night against the Blackhawks, etc. So Winnipeg's got to prove that they can go more than one series in postseason. But you got Winnipeg, and then you got Dallas, and Dallas is loaded with their star power. A lot of snipers there, and Jake Ottinger is a really good goalkeeper. The Kings are right there in that mix. That's a piece of that equation. Calgary, they've had a really good season. Vegas is really dangerous, although I think their goaltending is a little bit suspect to me. Vancouver, as good as they could be on certain nights, just played themselves out of a playoff spot, and they're done, which they've got to be breaking their hearts because they were the Cinderella team all last season. But I think the Western Conference it's going to be like a war zone. It's going to really, really be hard. I should throw Minnesota Wild in there, and they've had a lot of injuries to their skilled guys. They're getting most of those guys back for postseason play, so the Western Conference will be good. Hey, I want to mention something that happened in the NHL last night. Vancouver is playing, and they are down, and they scored 3 goals in 55 seconds in the final minute of the game. He pulled the goaltender, John. Had the extra attacker. They scored 3 straight goals, forced overtime, and then finally won the game in overtime. First time since 1917. That's a lot of hockey games that anybody had scored 3 goals in the final minute of a game and then actually won the game in overtime. But sadly, Vancouver got knocked out of the playoffs. They've been so streaky and so erratic, and they've had contract problems, etc. So, John, that's my update in the hockey hotline. Everything is going through area code 204, Winnipeg, Manitoba, when the playoffs start in a week, and that's going to be fun.
You even know the Canadian area codes. It's funny. The NHL is like the NBA. They're loaded in the West. So I'm fired up for this. I mean, this is must-see TV every year to watch the NBA playoffs. I'm hoping the Kings make a run here. I think that'd be kind of special for California.
They've really built this thing. The Kings, I think, have 44 wins right now, which is equal to what they had last year. But the Kings have added firepower. They obviously have Darcy Kemper, who has just had an amazing bounce back, save his career season, maybe save the Kings season. So Kings are going to be tough. But, boy, the Western Conference playoffs are going to be tough. But getting home ice advantage for a couple playoff rounds, huge, because right now at Crypto.com Arena, that place is an insane asylum. Those fans are going crazy. And to win in LA is almost impossible right now if you play in the Kings.
Speaking of insane asylums, let's transition to this. This is a 4-parter. Okay, they're short and quick. It's Sam the Tool Man, and he says, Lee, you are irrelevant. Trump derangement syndrome. Lee, you are washed up. Get off the air. You are incompetent and fabricate stories.
Sam the Tool Man. What a tool. If those are all the negatives swirling around this podcast, What does it say about you, Sam, watching this podcast and taking time out of your life as your life ticks away to communicate with us? Got no problem. Everybody's entitled to an opinion, even Sam the Tool Man, if he's wrong. That being said, what I would recommend, any Democrats out there who would like to join us in fans forum in the chat box, jump on board, because the only people that are screeching to me are angry followers of the guy they voted for president. Now, there must be people on the other side from the left who jump on fans forum chat box, defend the honor of the greatness. But Sam, glad to entertain you, even if you don't agree. Thanks for following. You're right. I win again.
The vitriol that has been coming out at you for commenting on Trump and the Dodgers story at the White House is something. Here's another one from a Dodger fan, and this is from Freddie. He goes, "Hey, keep that Dodger name out of your mouth before I slap you, old man."
I just love social media. Everybody's so disrespectful all the time. By the way, what was the first thing that came out of my mouth on Monday's podcast when we were talking about Dodgers, White House? First thing came out of my mouth, what an honor for these guys. What a memory of a lifetime for these guys. That's the first thing that came out of my mouth because they deserved this, because they honored it. And a whole bunch of players didn't want to go, and Clayton Kershaw stood up in a team meeting and said, we're representing this team and we accomplished this honor as a team. Let's go as a team. And they all went. But what was the first thing that came out of my mouth? Dodgers, what an exciting time. They deserve this honor. And yet, I get all this hate from the right-hand side on the chat box. That's kind of interesting. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, just to follow up here. This is from David. He gave us a couple of bucks too. And he says, "Hey, Democrat here. We don't cry on the internet, only maggots."
We move on. We had a lot of
let's
topics on the table. I'm not wasting my time talking to those people right now. Let's talk to the others.
Okay, so let's go to Gary. We're talking a little bit about what's going on in center field with the Dodgers. He says, Dodgers are waiting on Hacksaw Kim to be ready to play second base. Then they can play Edman in center field.
Hacksaw Kim, as of this morning, is hitting .328 Oklahoma City. So he has settled in. Obviously, it's an adjustment to come from Korea. Ball, variety of pitches, pitch clock, strike zone, different bats. The whole preparation, I think, to play Major League Baseball is really different. You're facing unbelievably gifted players on every pitching staff compared to what you might face in the Korean League. But the kid went to Oklahoma City. He's done everything they've asked. He's hitting .328. So I think that's a really good point, Gary. I think he'll be back pretty quickly, and then maybe Edman goes to center and Kim winds up at second base, lickety split. I'm surprised Padres has played so poorly defensively. He's not hitting for average either. He's popped some home runs because that's a hot prospect. And, this is a year and a half, almost 2 years now that he's been at the major league level in some form or fashion. It hasn't quite kicked in with consistency yet. John?
Doesn't it seem that Tommy Edman is playing better for the Dodgers than he did for the Cardinals?
Might it be he's surrounded by a better batting order with the Dodgers than he did with the Cardinals? But no, you're correct. That's a very valid point, especially in power department. He would occasionally pop one in St. Louis. He's hitting home runs every week for the Dodgers. Been very, very impressive.
Yeah, very surprising. Okay, let's go talk a little football here with Freddie. He goes, hey, with Gino's contract extension, do you still see the Raiders even thinking about Sanders?
I guess my bounce back response to you, Fred, would be, what happened if Shedeur Sanders falls? What if he drops to 6? Raider fan, please answer the question, what would you do? That Fans Forum chat box is open. If you had the chance to take Genty, the great running back from Boise State, and they are deficient at running back. If you had the chance to take Genty or draft Shedeur Sanders for the future, what would you do? I've been told that Shedeur Sanders' overall checklist doesn't stand out in terms of qualities. Has he played a lot of football? Hell yes. Is he a smart X and O's guy? Yeah, because he's played a lot of football. But he's also played half that schedule at a much lower level, so athletically he can dominate. Does he have a cannon for an arm? Absolutely not. That's a big issue. Has he gotten by on his ability just to kind of move the pocket? Yeah. But in the pros, it's a whole different game. He's taken ungodly numbers of sacks And that's in college football. What happens if he goes to a bad team? In the NFL, sometimes you don't get up from those sacks. So I was told that he doesn't check off all the boxes to be a quote star going in. Now you can develop some of the things, but I don't know. Raider fan has to answer that question for me. If you had the choice between the Boise running back or the Colorado quarterback, what do you do? I think they'd take Genty. John, what do you think they would do?
I'm interested in this because with Tom Brady involved, are they going to change the philosophy? Because Shador would be the shiny object in this case. But I think to Freddie's point, the fact that Geno got that extension, that tells me they're committed to him for the next couple of years. So maybe they're like passing on the quarterback class this year and anticipating a draft next year.
Yeah, I was told, I can't think of the names off the top of my head. I was told there are going to be 5 really good college quarterbacks next year in that draft. So maybe Shador goes somewhere else. Maybe he goes to New Orleans as the quarterback for the future because it's Derek Carr's last season. I don't think he falls into the 20s. Pittsburgh needs a quarterback for the future, if not a quarterback today. But I don't think Shador Sanders is dropping all the way down to, I think Pittsburgh drafts 21. It's going to be fascinating. But his entitlement has turned some people off. Some of the interviews have turned people off. The fact he didn't work out at his own pro day has turned people off. The fact that he told Tennessee this past weekend, I'm canceling out. I'm not coming in to throw. I got 4 years on tape. Go look at my tape. I'm not sure that every coach, every general manager wants to hear that from a prospective draft pick that you're looking at. So I don't know. There's just a bunch of issues from a personality standpoint, in addition to the fact he doesn't check all the boxes skill-wise, that probably maybe forcing him down the board some. Does that make sense?
It does, but you can imagine that his father is coaching him on how to handle himself in this draft. And I bet you they have a couple of teams in mind where they want to make sure he goes and they want to avoid some others. But tell me about how he didn't go to his, pro day. Is it Shador Sanders pro day or is it the Colorado Buffaloes pro day?
It was Colorado's pro day highlighted by Shador Sanders and Travis Hunter. That was the storyline. I mean, there were all the other Buffalo players were there. A couple of their wide receivers. One of their wide receivers, Jimmy Horn, was just tremendously impressive. But so these guys obviously get the chance to meet with all the different scouts. They interview him again, etc. But Shador didn't throw. And then Shador's public stance, he told Tennessee Titans, you got 4 years of my tape at Jackson State and CU. Just go watch that. That's who I am. So big issue. He's acting very differently than you would expect a guy who would be the leader of a franchise to act. Is because Deion's trying to place him in a certain position? It doesn't matter. Most of these teams are really bad. He's going to go to a bad team regardless of where he's going. So that's where we go. Okay, next question.
Okay, let's go here to the O-Siders. He goes, the Pac-12 is struggling finding an 8th team. When should San Diego State push the panic button? Is it possible that the Mountain West becomes a more desirable contract and gets a bigger TV deal than the Pac-12?
No. First of all, they've already signed documents. You can't opt out of the Pac-12. The belief is that they're going to have to find another team football-wise. But that other team, to me, is not a sexy draw. Memphis makes no sense because of geography and time zones and all that. Central Florida, South Florida, it doesn't make any sense. Tulane, nah. There has been talk about Rice and Southwest Texas State. But nobody in Houston watches Rice football. They're Houston Cougar fans or Texas Longhorn or A&M fans. They're not Rice Owl fans. I just don't know that there's a big hook there. What I think that the Pac-12 leadership should do is go back to the NCAA and say, give us a waiver. Let us start as a 7-team football league. We've already added Gonzaga in basketball. We may add St. Mary's in basketball. And let's see what the next calendar year brings if there's more shuffling of the deck. I still maintain that this is absolutely asinine to have Stanford and Cal in the Atlantic Coast Conference with all that travel, and neither one of those schools is getting a full cut of the TV rights deal from the ACC, and you got all the expenses for your non-football sports that have to travel and go play Wake Forest, etc. That makes no sense at all. Try to lure them back and see if there's an escape clause. If you got Cal and Stanford back, then you have the Bay Market area. You're never going to get the LA market just because there is no UCLA and USC there. But they got to be very, very careful as to where they go. In terms of the Mountain West, the Mountain West TV deal is only $3 million per year per school. I don't think it's going to be much higher than that. The Pac-12, the rumor line that I get from Pac-12 people who are in the know is this TV deal might be at the most $10 million per school. That's not a hell of a lot compared to what they're getting in the Big 12, the SEC, the Big 10, and the ACC, because they won't have any marquee schools. Make sense, John?
Yeah, it's still an upgrade though over the Mountain West.
I think so.
Yeah, but do you think there's any possibility that Nevada, Reno, they might have to kind of let them in just so they have 8?
Well, there's talk, but I don't think they carry a lot of clout. And there's great uncertainty about Vegas. Vegas has got leadership problems. The president has resigned. They've gone through coaches. They got financial issues. They had $20 million in debt. People say, oh, the fans will come flock to see a Pac-12 game if Vegas is in it. Well, this is not the Pac-12 that you and I grew up watching. There's no Oregon, there's no Washington, there are no Trojans, there's no Bruins. It's not like these guys are coming into Vegas to play UNLV in a, quote, Pac-12 team. So it's a tough set of circumstances. I would ask for the waiver and just see what a year from now looks like. My fondest wish was I wish BYU was a free agent, because BYU would really be kind of cool in a new look Pac-12, but that's still not a magnet to draw a ton of viewership. Pac-12's they got an issue in terms of membership, just like I think the Mountain West is going to have an issue in terms of membership too.
But even if you got a waiver for a year, it's not like anything's going to significantly change unless by magic Cal and Stanford get out of their contract. I wonder if Sac State could be sort of like a wild card here. They're going independent. Maybe you take a gamble on a place like that.
No, there's no legacy. There's no history. No network's giving you a wad of money because you got Sacramento State.
Well, then there's nothing left.
They may talk a good game. Well, there's nothing left at this hour. Maybe all that changes. Who knows? Again, I go back to my comment that I can't believe Cal and Stanford in the Atlantic Coast Conference, and I think this is really, really good. But Cal and Stanford don't swing the pendulum back the other way, because there's nobody in the Los Angeles market that's going to be playing in this conference. It's just a bad set of circumstances because of the greed of Southern Cal and UCLA, and then all the other dominoes, the way they fell. Okay, John, let's move on.
Moving on. Let's go here to Callan. Talk about that national championship game was a nice distraction from hearing that 2,000 men's players and 1,500 women's players are in the transfer portal. Bravo to Gino for calling it out afterwards.
Well, UConn women, that might be, and he's had so many great teams and so many great players have gone through Storrs, Connecticut. That might be the best collection of talent on one team I think I've ever seen in women's basketball. He did a phenomenal job. And in terms of the men's tournament game, I could not believe that Florida got choked to death in the first half, and then Houston was the one that choked at the end of the game. And by the way, as of Friday, the total in the first week of the transfer portal was 2,057 players, which to me it's just abominable. And if that's not enough, did you know today at 8:00 this morning, the transfer portal, the spring transfer portal in college football opened? Think about that.
Another couple of thousand players probably entering that as well.
Yeah, so that's where we are in college athletics. It's just totally upside down.
Well, Callan has a quick follow-up here. I want to get this one in. He goes, I'd love to hear a Hacksaw-style rant about the Suns like he did in his first night on KTAR.
Well, at the end of the day, with the Suns, you have a new owner that came in and promised everything, and Matt Ishbia, very successful businessman, and they're out of the playoffs. Did not make the playoffs again. Lost 8 games in a row. And no, he was going to spend all this money, highest payroll in the NBA. He was going to make all these trades. They are capped out till the next lifetime. And they got contracts, and they got 37-year-old Kevin Durant. They got a Devin Booker who's very unhappy. They got injury-prone Brad Beal. They traded away a lot of the young picks. They don't have high draft picks in the future. This is not a good set of circumstances in Phoenix. And I think as we sit here in April, I think Durant is going to be traded. But Kevin Durant is age 37 now. That's not the Kevin Durant of the past. And I don't know what you're going to get back. I don't think you're going to get 3 number 1 draft picks for a 37-year-old guy. So the Suns as an organization have set. They got a real problem. The owner promised things, could not deliver. And now look at what he's got on his hands, a non-playoff aging basketball team with no picks in the future really to use to fix this thing. It's not a good look. Phoenix has got some real problems.
Well, your analysis of the Suns is on target, but the best part of this question, it was your first night at KTAR. You told me how you caused a dust storm, out in Phoenix when you landed there. Tell that story again.
Just real simply, I got there. Phoenix was a developing market. It had Arizona State football, which was king. It had the Phoenix Suns, which was a great run organization by then Jerry Colangelo, and they really had nothing else. There was no NFL, there was no Major League Baseball at that point in time. So I just tried to theorize as I was driving cross country to Phoenix how I was going to approach doing sports talk radio. Well, just as I got there, the NCAA put Arizona State on probation for 3 years for cheating. Big scandal involving Coach Frank Kush. Just as I got there, the Suns, who had a really good franchise, top seed in the West, got knocked out in the first round, had home court advantage, and got knocked out in the first round. And just as I got there, baseball went out on strike. This was 1981, I believe it was. Baseball struck. So I go on the air the first night, and I do my opening spiel. From KTAR in Phoenix, sports giant of the Southwest. We welcome you to the 620 Sports Line. And I introduced myself. I said, here are the topics on the table that we're going to talk about tonight. And I said, please explain to me how Arizona State, with all this money and the Sun Angel Foundation and the beautiful campus and those pretty women and drawing 72,000 fans, why do you have to cheat? Why do you cheat in football, Arizona State? I did that. And I said, please explain to me for the Phoenix Suns how the hell you could be number one in the entire Western Conference with Alvin Adams and Walter Davis and all these great players and get knocked out in the first round when you had home court advantage for the entire playoffs? How's that possible? Suns fans, what do you think of your team now? And then how the hell in baseball could you go out on strike? And the phones lit up like a Christmas tree. And that set the tempo of who I was and what I was going to do. Because up until that point in time, John, sports talk radio was nice. Mom and pop radio. Everything was beautiful. Well, everything was not beautiful. Sun Devils were on probation and in jail forever. And it was catastrophic to the football program. And then obviously the Suns just never won that championship they had tried so hard to win. So, yeah, I pushed a few hot buttons that first night on KTAR. And here we are, years and years later, still doing it.
I love the story. I think it's great, just rolling into town and just blowing everybody up. But were you known as Hacksaw back then?
Yes.
You were?
Yeah, they gave me that nickname when I actually worked in Cleveland. And I came to Phoenix, and first night on the air, as the phones were going crazy. Of course, Phoenix was a melting pot of people from all over, and people jumped on board. First thing out of their mouth, Hacksaw, welcome to the Valley of the Sun. So the name stuck with me, and then it followed me in the moving van and the wife and the kids from Phoenix to San Diego, where I became the voice of the Chargers. So yeah, that's who I am. That's what I do.
All good. Okay, let's keep going here. Go to Carlos, talk about the Padres, and says, hey, great to see you guys. Left field for the Padres is a question. What young player can step up in left field?
It's a good question. But as long as they're getting productivity from whatever committee they've got, I think you just stay with it and just ride it and just see what happens. Gavin Sheets is hitting right now. He did not hit with any consistency while with the White Sox, but he's got the added ability to pop. We'll see if the kid who used to be with the Yankees and Indians, Gonzalez, if Oscar Gonzalez can hit consistently at the major league level. He's hit everywhere in the minor leagues, and he's got power. He's going to get a chance now to be part of this platoon, at least going forward. And Eggy Rosario has been moved to the outfield at AAA El Paso. Nobody claimed him on waivers, so the Padres still have him. And if these other guys don't pan out, maybe Eggy, who's had some spurts where he's hit major league pitching, other spurts that he's not, but he's got some pop. Maybe they give him a kick at the can there. So it's committee in left field for the time being right now.
Yeah, it's interesting, because watching the game, over the weekend, Lockridge had his moments. Granted, he was playing center field because Merrill wasn't there, but Lockridge is still more of a fourth outfielder. And, Oscar Gonzalez got a chance to play, and he hit 2 hits, I think, in his first game that were really hard hit balls. So I just think Jason Hayward, man, I watch him play. I just think, the time has passed him up. I think they're going to have to move on from him, and there's no way Gurriel is going to play in left field.
No, not at all. The only thing with Hayward is there's some leadership qualities there that don't show up on a stat sheet. The other thing is, has he lost his bat speed? And those coaches and those guys gauge all those statistics, those analytics. And if they come to the conclusion in a couple of weeks that he's lost his bat speed, and if he's hitting 180, then probably he doesn't stay with this team for an extended period. But if he does start to hit, and he did hit in stretches with the Dodgers, did hit in stretches to the tail end with the Astros, so maybe you keep him. But at least they got numbers of guys who've been productive at times other places, so they'll go from there. John, let's do a couple social media here before we put the lid on this.
Okay, let's get these guys involved here as well. And who do we got here first? Let's talk here a little bit about the NFL. And this goes first to Wad A. That's who his name is. And he says, hey, if they move to an 18-game season, they need to have 2 bye weeks per team. Player safety is a joke. I'd rather them play 14 games and let defenses rock players again.
Understand it's all about the money. That's what the owners care about. Negotiations, if they do come to the table, the league will throw a lot more money on the table because an 18-game schedule means they will have to share much more revenue with the Players Association. A lot of fans don't understand that the TV contracts and all that are based on a big dollar check. Well, that dollar check is split like 51-49 in favor of the players. So if they go 18-game schedule, it means that they're reworking of all the TV contracts, so it means more revenue comes in the front door and a bigger percentage of that money goes to the players. They will include 2 bye weeks during the course of the season. I think the union, if they're going to accept an 18-game schedule, they're going to ask for bigger rosters. We're going to go from 58 to 63 or maybe 68 full salaried players because the injury factor in the league is so severe. And is it unfair to the players? Yeah. Players, though, do like the payday. Yeah. The concern is your off season gets shorter and shorter, especially for the guys that are having surgery. There's less recovery time, less rehab time. So this is a long drawn out thing. The bulk of the people that I kind of network with are of the opinion in 2027 we're going to have an 18-game schedule. Now they may do away with a lot of the OTAs, and they're definitely going to cut another preseason game out. But 18 games wear and tear, that's pretty significant stuff. John?
Yeah, 17 is an odd number. It's you finish the season 9-8 or 8-9. That just bothers me. But when you go back, like I remember, like when O.J. Simpson broke the record for 2,000 yards in a season. Wasn't that a 12-game season in the NFL, like around 1970?
Yeah, 12 or 14. I think it was 12.
Yeah. So look how far. This is like a 50% increase.
Yeah, different era. And there's so many more dollars on the table now that are all byproduct of the big business of what the National Football League has become. And like anything else, the union may stand up and yell, no, we're not going to have a conversation about that. But at the end of the day, it's always about the dollars and what the league is going to provide the players in terms of freedom, more pay, different set of working conditions, et cetera. Everything is negotiable because there's a dollar sign attached to everything that is negotiated. Okay, next one.
We'll go to the little Dodgers here with Eric, and he says, anytime the Dodgers are booed, America wins.
The evil empire. Dodgers got booed in that last road trip. That's the way it's going to be. They haven't done anything wrong. They're just conducting business very differently, and they're in the number 2 market in the country, and they've creatively financed contracts that players are willing to deal with. And now we're seeing more and more contracts that either have deferred money or back-end loaded, et cetera. So it's just a new method of doing business. The union agreed to this. But having Yankee Dodgers postseason, that's really good for baseball in the big picture of the economy. Having the Padres Red Sox in a World Series would be good for our markets. I don't know, it'd be good for all of baseball in terms of the Fall Classic and TV ratings, et cetera. But the big market franchises with their their legacy carry an awful lot of clout.
It's interesting is just watching sports, particularly baseball as a kid, you get caught up in the rivalries. And back then, of course, players were stuck with one team most of their career. But it's just interesting how the game has evolved. And now players like Manny Machado they talk about being professionals. And so they take all the booing sort of in stride. It's almost like they're a WWE character out there, that they know they're going to get the booing, but it's all part of the showmanship of the sport. What do you think about that?
I think the imagery has changed. Players have a lot more personality. The way the game is packaged, the telecasts have made a big difference in the way the game is now seen. Awful lot of noise out there too, but as long as the fans are fair to players, that you have a right to cheer, you have a right to boo, you don't have a right to say rude and crude things to players. Players don't have a right to go into the stands after the fans either. So, but it's electric. You can't put a dollar figure on the emotion of what it's like to be at Petco Park now to see a home game. That is so cool. And again, I came out of an NFL environment, which was those playoff games were just amazing to be part of and to watch and to broadcast. That's what Padre baseball at home at Petco Park has been. And obviously that's where it is in, some of the other great places that have great history of fan support, be it Wrigley Field, Chicago, Fenway Park, Boston, Yankees, Mets when they're winning, etc. So it's cool. It is a different aura though. That's a real valid point. Okay, next one.
Next one. Okay, let's talk about the Chargers here. And this is from Mark, and he says, I would like to see your mock draft, probably a more realistic model of what will go down. As far as Becton and Alt on the right side, they should call them the Grill Brothers, as they will be pancaking defenders.
The Mountain Men. That's what Harbaugh called them. That's actually what I call them. We'll talk more about the draft in the next couple of weeks. We will do a draft preview of what's hot, what's not, etc. This is the most unique draft we've had in a while, John. Everybody owns their first round pick in the draft this year. None of the picks have been traded. Now, it does not mean that something cannot happen in the days leading up to the draft where there may be some flip-flopping. But this is the first time in a long time that I can remember everybody owns their first selection. It's a really good draft. It's a really deep draft. Maybe not at the quarterback position, but it's a really good draft. The linemen, both offensively and defensively, it's got a lot of skill. Not a great draft in terms of running backs. There are some real good athletes in the secondary. So it'll be fun. We'll do a lot more about that when I get back home in the next week or so. Hey, John, listen, this has been great.